Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and a very warm welcome if you're new here. February, the month of love is upon us. And what better way to celebrate the upcoming Valentine's Day than with a doll collab? This month, I was lucky enough to join some of my fellow doll artists in a Valentine's Day collaboration hosted by the lovely Electric Bunny. Our theme was Lovecore, so I knew I wanted to make a romantic pair. Be sure to stick around until the end of the video to see what everyone else made. My dolls for this collab are inspired by the amazing stop-motion short film, The Maker, a bittersweet love story about these little cute bunny creatures. I'll link it down below in case you haven't seen it. It's so worth the watch. For my Lovecore take on these characters, here's what I came up with. I leaned into the Jester vibes a little bit with their makeup and especially the girls' clothes, and I incorporated hearts in both of their designs. It is V-Day after all. To make them, I'll be using this Ever After High Apple White's body, combined with this Monster High Frankie Stein head. And for our male doll, I want to use this BTS body with the head of my Monster High Jackson Jekyll. This is a slightly bigger project, so without further ado, let's get into it. Off to the workroom. First, we need to prep the dolls for customization by cutting their hair short, as close to the scalp as I can. Then, when both dolls have a buzz cut, I dunk them into a cup of freshly boiled water to soften the vinyl heads. Careful not to burn myself, I pry the heads off the neck pegs to remove them. Since I'm going to need Jackson's head, I take my cuticle pusher and scrape around on the inside of his head to remove the hair plugs. I also use my tweezers to make sure I get all the old hair and sticky glue out of there. He was a bit of a mess. Now we just need to remove the factory paint with some acetone, and he's all clean. So here's what we're working with. I want to mod their bodies a bit, starting off with his stiff BTS hands. They don't have as nice of a shape as Monster High hands. So we're going to remedy that by cutting the fingers apart and reshaping them until they look closer to this. I carefully take my box cutter and split the pinky from the ring finger, and the index finger from the middle finger. Once they've been cleaned up a bit, I pop them in a cup of boiling water and let them soak for a few minutes. This softens them up so that I can reshape them into something closer to the Monster High boy hands. Once I'm happy with the shape, I put them in a glass of ice water to set them again. I saw this on Stephoodoll's channel, but I think the method originally came from the Hatter dolls. It's really easy, but it makes such a difference. For the girls' body mods, I'm going to do something a bit drastic and cut off her toes. I imagine she's a dancer and he's a musician, so I want her to have ballet shoes, or the shape of them under her tights at least. With both of them cut, I can lay down a sheet of plastic and mix some 2-part epoxy putty. It makes a kind of clay that you can use to sculpt with, and it attaches very well to plastic. I sculpt her feet at a very bad camera angle to make sure nobody can see what I'm doing. Once sculpted, they look something like this. I'm not going for perfection since they'll be covered by her clothes, but I wanted the general shape of them to be right. Once the body mods are done, we can move our attention back to the heads for rerouting. For the girl, I want some pink hair to match her clothes. So, taking a few strands from my hank and my rerouting tool, I can carefully replug every existing hole with new hair. For him, I wanted mostly black hair with a rainbow fringe, as a nod to the ending of the short film. I set that in place with some glue, then pour boiling water over the hair to make it lay flat in the direction I want. And we have this! Looking good so far. Now we just need to style it with some got-to-be glued and a little brush and cut it short and maybe some more hairspray? Yeah, more hairspray and some elastic bands will do the trick, right? Well, I styled their hair and decided I hated it. I went through the process of removing their heads again and scraping out the freshly plucked hair. During the first rerouting, the boy's head split open at the front hairline, so I'm carefully gluing it shut with some super glue. Not wanting to risk more splits, I put their heads back on and resigned myself to figuring something else out later. For now, let's color match their heads and body mods to their bodies, shall we? I mixed some airbrush thinner with airbrush paint in the colors Dead White, Elf Skin Tone, and Bloody Red until I get a color close enough to the dolls. Then I take them outside for a spray with my airbrush. It's not an exact match, but I think it's close enough. Now I can take them outside for a spray of Citadel to get them ready for their face-ups. For the boy's face, I start by blushing him with some warm peachy toned pastels. I do this around his temples and mouth especially. Then I use a little airbrush cleaner and black soft pastels to map out where I want his blobby eyebrows to go. I correct any mistakes with a kneaded eraser. At this point, I started to map out the rest of his face, but my pencils weren't sticking very well. So I took him outside for another spray of sealant. After that, the pencils stick much better, and I can truly map out where I want things to go. I draw his eyes bigger than I normally would for a boy doll because I'm going for a soft expression, and the bunnies in the short film have big, soulful eyes. I draw some eyelet creases above them, and turn the corners of his mouth upward. G1 Monster High dolls usually have a more smoldering expression, so I do this sometimes when I want the doll to look more friendly. At the outer corner of his eyes, I draw a waterline, and I give him a tear duct at the inner corner of the eyes. Then I map out where his irises need to go. I like drawing really big ones, and for these dolls, they're extra appropriate, I think. Once I'm happy, I can start darkening everything I drew. He has a heart over his one eye to bring in the love theme and add interest to his face up. I fill in his irises with some brown and darken his blobby eyebrows with black pencil. They're kind of like an inverted tear shape, actually. Feeling happy with that, I use my black pencil to darken his eyelash area. He won't have any individual lashes, but I do like to do this just to give his face the suggestion of lashes, you know? This is about as far as my pencils would take me, so I break out the acrylic paint to finish the job. I use white for his sclera, which is one thing I usually struggle to build with pencils alone. I also mix a color slightly lighter than his skin tone to add some highlights around his eyebrows, on his eyelids, down his nose, on his inner eye corners, and his cupid's bow. Then I use a bluish tone to add shading to the sclera, just so they're not so cartoonishly white. The pencil color wasn't quite right, so I mixed a nice mid-tone pink for his heart outline. Then I go over some of the lines I drew with a brown shade. With a dark chocolatey brown, I first emphasize the outline of his irises and add shading at the top where the eyes normally have a shadow from your eyelid and lashes. I use progressively lighter brown shades as I go down the iris, but I keep them all warm toned. To finish them, I use a much lighter brown, almost orange shade to add a highlight right under the pupil. His eyelash lines can then be darkened with some black, and I can use a dotting tool to add his pupils. Let's use that same dotting tool for the blobby eyebrows. I extend their tails with my brush. To finish his face, I add a white catchlight in his eyes. Much like with our boy doll, I start by blushing the girl's face with some peachy pastels to bring life into the plastic. I blush her a bit more than him though, because her face still has a greenish undertone from Frankie's skin. I add some pink to her lips, the corners of her mouth, and around her nose. Then I use an airbrush cleaner to map out the pink heart lipstick she's going to have. I also map out her blobby eyebrows just like I did with her male companion. I was working on them at the same time, so it was around this point that she also needed a fresh coat of sealant before the pencils wanted to stick. For the most part, I follow her mold for the eye shape. But because I wanted nice big eyes, I extend the under eye part past the mold, so they look bigger. I also add a waterline and tear duct. She also gets some eyelid creases. I give her nice big irises too, making sure to leave more space on the outer edge of the sclera than the inner edge, so she's looking forward. I completely forgot at this point that I actually wanted to have them both looking sideways, so I guess I'll do that for a doll in the future. I darken the lines around her lips, turning the corners upwards for her as well. And with pink, I draw her cute heart lipstick. On her one eye, she just gets some pink eyeshadow. The other eye gets a heart to match the male doll, but unlike his, hers is filled in. I thought the contrast was cute. I use that same pink pencil to fill in her blobby eyebrows. She needs blue eyes, so I fill in her irises using some blue watercolor pencils. I darken her lash line with black. For some reason, her face-up was much more pigmented with the pencils, and I think it's because she was sprayed with the airbrush first. When the pencils won't build anymore, I switch over to paint. She also gets some nice bright sclera in white. And like I did for him, I'm adding highlights in a lighter color than her skin tone, around her eyebrows, inner eyes, nose, and Cupid's bow. With a brown color, I darken the lines of her eyes and mouth. And with pink, I emphasize that little heart on her lips. If you're wondering why I bother to draw the faces first if I just end up painting over them, it's because the drawing maps everything out for me, which helps keep everything symmetrical. And because I work with watered down paint, the drawing's color can sometimes act as an undertone. I use that same pink for her eyebrows. With a slightly lighter pink, I go over her eyeshadow and the heart she has over one eye. Then I can use dark blue for the outline and shadow of her irises. Like I did with the boy doll, I use progressively lighter shades of blue as I work my way down the iris. The lightest blue color I use to add a little highlight right underneath the pupil. And finally, we can darken her lashes with black and give her a white catchlight too. They still need some hair, so how about we go back to our comfort zone and make yarn wefts? To do this, I cut lengths of yarn in the colors I want the hair to be and tie them around this mini coat hanger. Once I have a good bunch, I go back and meticulously unravel every strand. I saw this method on my friend Lucia's channel, and while it takes a little bit longer, it does make brushing the yarn out much easier. After being brushed, the fibers are a bit frizzy, so to smooth them, I go over them with my mini hair straightener. I cut them off the hanger and lay them flat on a sheet of plastic. Then I lay down a ruler to keep everything in place before covering the tips of the hair with glue and working it into the fibers. I saw this method on Enchantarium's channel, and it really is the best way to keep the glue in a neat line. Once the glue is dry, we have a whole bunch of wefts to work with. Let's start with the pink ones. I'm opting to just glue the wefts directly to their heads. So I use an all-purpose tacky glue and add that to the weft before holding it in place for a few minutes. I glue downward facing wefts all along her hairline. Then I start at the back and start gluing wefts in the direction I want her hair to go, until it looks like this. The boy doll goes pretty much through the same process. I start by gluing downward facing wefts along the top of his head where I want his hair to be the longest. The rest of his bald spot can be filled in with more black wefts in the direction I want his hair to go. With that all filled in, we can move on to the sides of his hair. I first glue a weft facing upwards and try to get it as close to the other wefts as possible. This will form his part once we flip it over. I do this all around his hairline and fill in the rest with downward facing wefts. Yarn can be styled with heat, so to finish them off, I'm heating up a butter knife with my mini straightener and use it to press the front wefts backwards. This helps them lay flat. It's not the best hairline I've ever made, but it's better than my first attempt. I'm whipping out the hairspray again to help style the hair in place. I put hairspray on this little brush and comb the hair until it sits the way I want it. Then I cut it to the right length. Yeah, I'd say it's definitely an improvement. Same goes for the boy doll. I use heat to help the hair lay flat in places, cut it to the length I want, and style it using hairspray. Comb, cut, style, and voila! For their clothes, I made patterns using the plastic wrap and tape method, which I then cut out of different fabrics. I decided to sew them on my machine, and I don't have a great filming setup for that in my workroom yet, so excuse the lack of footage here. I promise I'll film the whole process again for you next time. But off camera, I made them these outfits. For her, I made leggings with ribbons wrapped around her feet, and a little bodysuit with lace in the places the bunny from the film has. He gets a pantsuit with a little coat and waistcoat. I made them both ears and embedded pins in them so they can easily attach to the heads. Our female doll doesn't need shoes, but I did want to give our male doll some. I think these Portuguese shoes are perfect for him. So, off camera, I gave them a few coats of black acrylics. Now we can use the dry brush technique with lighter colors to bring out all the pretty sculpted details these shoes have. To make their masks, I used some Sculpey polymer clay in this light peachy color and started by making a flat disc like this. With a variety of tools, I shaped the eyes. Then I realized the disc was too big, so I shaved some clay off the sides and made the eyes bigger. Whoops, I lost a bit of footage there. But I just carved an indent where the teeth need to go and added 2 blobs to form the closed eyelids. And I'm carving out the fortissimo symbols they have on their foreheads. I break off smaller bits of a lighter clay and shape them into teeth before attaching them to the masks. They don't need to be perfect. The puppets, made by the talented Louise Spayd, are known for having kind of crooked teeth. Once they're all done, I pop them into the oven for half an hour to bake. Off camera, I painted them with this greyish colour to match the faces in the short film. But I want them to look aged, so I used a watered down brown and let it seep into all the cracks and crevices. I used some dry brushing with lighter colours to give them more dimension. And I also use a bone colour and dry brush that onto the teeth to differentiate them from the rest of the mask. In the short film, the maker uses a kind of guidebook to help him create his female companion, so it felt only fitting to make that too. I use a piece of faux suede and some thick cardboard that I cut to the right size using my box cutter again. These pieces can then be glued to the wrong side of the suede. I cut the fabric a bit smaller, leaving about 1 centimeter on each side to fold over. Then I cut the corners, albeit a bit too close to the cardboard, to make turning it easier. The leftover edges can then be flipped and glued to the inside of the book cover, and I clip that in place until they're dry. Super easy, right? To cover that bright yellow, I just glue down a piece of black cardstock on either side. Those yellow corners were bugging me though, so I covered them with these gold book corner protectors. They're a bit big, so I end up switching them out later. For the inside pages, I fold several small stacks of paper in half until I have enough to fill the cover. Then I mark where I want some holes to go for binding and stab them into the stacks with a thick needle. This was my first time bookbinding, so there was a lot of trial and error, and I don't know how cohesive it'll be. But I'll link the tutorial I watched for you below in case you're interested. Before I glue the pages into the spine of the book, I want to age them a bit. To do this, I steep some strong tea and chuck the whole book in there to soak for a few minutes. This gives the pages that old brownish tint we see in the short film. As a finishing touch, I take some time to draw teeny tiny illustrations and gibberish text on some of the pages. In the end, I opted for these smaller, more ornate corner protectors. I like them a lot more than the big ones. With that, our Valentine's dolls are done. So, what do you think? I'm really happy with how everything turned out. It's been on my mind to make these 2 for a while now, so I'm really glad I finally got around to it. I didn't give them any names because there's no dialogue or names in the short film. What do you think? Should I leave them nameless? I'm glad their hair came out somewhat decent in the end. There were quite a few ups and downs throughout the process of making these dolls, which is ironic because with my Emily doll it was the exact opposite. And I didn't make her that long ago. But I guess that's the beauty of art and doll making. You never really know how things are going to turn out. In a previous iteration of their concept art, I gave them hats, but in the end I decided I liked them better without them. Do you think I should have given them hats instead of just ears? I got this beautiful little violin online and I think it's the perfect size for our boy doll. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of my bunny pair. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video just as much as I enjoyed making it. If you liked this video and you think I deserve it, you can leave me a comment or give me a big old-fashioned thumbs up. It's free, and it really is the best way to support the channel. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to my channel to see more videos like this one. Don't forget to check out the other dolls my collaboration partners made. In this collab, we have our host, Electric Bunny, Rock Puppet Switchy Pink, myself, I Could Do That DIY, and Enchantarium. They are all super amazing doll artists, so please go show their videos some love after this. In my next video, I'll be making another doll I've been wanting to do for ages. It's gonna be so fun. So if you don't want to miss that when it comes out, boop that subscribe button, stick around, and as always, stay golden. I'll see you next time. Bye! Think you got the best of me.